Hi everyone, Rose Webster here. A lot to tell you this week. The EPA quietly approved 20 U.S. states to release Wolbachia-infected Aedes. Now, I'm seeing a lot of great comments out there where people are saying, what about birds and fish and bats and all these other things that consume it? And you're absolutely right. Introducing Wolbachia into a species that never had it before is causing problems in our ecosystems, and dire problems at that. Now, this is entirely false, this statement. Instead of relying on genetic engineering, MosquitoMate infects lab-grown mosquitoes with the common bacterium, Wolbachia pipientis, which affects mosquitoes but not animals or humans. This is entirely false. And I'll show you this study. Notable points: Wolbachia can infect mammalian cells, even human cells. The potential for horizontal transfer to animals and humans has been established, and Wolbachia should be further evaluated as causes of human infection. And in that case, the phalerococcal gene was not found, which is the nematode worm that normally emits Wolbachia. That a lot of people think this is the only way humans can get it, or even animals. Now, Wolbachia is not just a bacteria. It's up there with some of the nastiest ones. It's also a reproductive parasite, and it's maternally inherited along with mitochondria. It's very powerful. It's more powerful than these genetic GMO Ozotec trials and things like that, in my mind. But none of this is a wise idea when you have more than one or two vectors of Zika, and they're not just the two you're told about. We also have Culex species. In fact, Evans et al. Determined that there were 35 species, and 7 of which are in the U.S. That covers the entire U.S. Now, what has alarm bells ringing in my mind is Culex tarsalis has been found to be a vector of Zika in Mexico, and it covers most of the U.S. Now, when Culex tarsalis, which normally doesn't have Wolbachia, naturally acquires it, and how does it do that? When things die, birds, etc., different organisms, etc., what happens is it becomes a better vector of West Nile virus, which is very related to Zika. And in another Culex species, malaria was enhanced when the Culex species naturally acquired the Wolbachia. And there's numerous, almost countless ways this can happen, okay? So here's the key thing. The entire U.S. is at risk of having Wolbachia in Culex enhance Zika virus and carry it to the gonads, heart, central nervous system, optic lobe, and retina. And what I want you to keep in mind here is that Wolbachia can survive at least a week outside of a cell. It's extremely hardy. And they can reinvade cells and establish stable infections at all time points. And I'll show you that. Horizontal transfer events are common. They're actually common. Even though you're going to hear, oh, it can infect mammals, it can infect humans, it hasn't been found and hasn't been found. Well, guess what? If this is so safe, why can't we test for Wolbachia? And when these North Atlantic right whales were dying, it wasn't even on the radar. Oceans Initiative told me they don't even test for that. Well, guess what? If you're going to release these into the atmosphere, we should be able to test them in vertebrates. And if they're found, guess what? We pretty well know it's because there's certain species that feed preferentially off the Aedes genus of mosquitoes, larvae, and eggs. Now, the larvae, okay, Aedes larvae and Culex larvae, they behave differently. They look different. Aedes and Culex look different. Birds rely on the sense of sight when they eat certain insects, and fish often rely on, and I'm generalizing here, but movement. And Aedes larvae do behave differently in the water as opposed to Culex. Culex bite overnight, and I think we've all been told daytime active, daytime active. So the people most vulnerable are going to be overnight workers, and homeless people especially, and this is going to be a big mess. This really is. Now, I want to let you know also that there's quite the effort to sort of contain what is known about these vectors. And I did find this from a Brock University student. They did look at Culex pipiens and said they're likely poor vectors of Zika. Now, in different areas, mosquitoes can genetically be different and have different abilities to transmit. So every area needs to be looking at Culex as a Zika vector. And notably, you said, does not negate all Culex mosquitoes. And Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus may complicate the issue. And those were a few of his points. Now, let me just get to my other point here. Now, the CBC disabled a comment of mine, which was quite disturbing. But when I first heard about MosquitoMate's plans to release these in 20 U.S. states, I started making posts. Now, Ronald Torino from the UN immediately shared my post. I have no way of knowing who he shared it with. He's from the UN. And, you know, the WHO and the UN, they're connected. And, you know, they've been working on this Eliminate Dengue, which is the Wolbachia-Infected Aedes stuff, for decades. So I want you to keep that in mind. Now, I'm seeing some very disturbing posts stating things like, to what extent does air pollution play a role in infertility? And then we're also seeing things like plastic pollution. Now, these are all bad things, yeah. But I'm almost wondering, like, when is it going to be that climate change is going to be blamed for infertility? Because here's the deal. In Canada, we contribute 1.6% of the global total of greenhouse gas emissions. Now, yes, people say per capita we're this and that and this, and it's horrible. Well, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. 1.6% of the global total is 1.6, okay? The US, India, and China need to be all on board there. What is more urgent right now is we got more than half of men with declining fertility rates, more than half of insectivores, dramatic declines in population, and grassland species. There's one more, and I can't remember. But, oh, shorebirds, about, I think it's like a 43% decrease. These are alarm bells going off saying, Wolbachia is infecting vertebrates. We have to do something. And the other thing I'm seeing now is that, why are so many people dying? It's street drugs. It's the fentanyl and air pollution is killing one in 6 people worldwide. Well, you know what? If you read up on Wolbachia enough, it'll scare the dickens out of you. And what we really need to do is sort of look back at this hype going on. There was this big headline, more than 15,000 scientists from 184 countries issue a warning to humanity. And this is where the CBC disabled my comment. They talked about a growing middle class and its carbon footprint, so now we got to tax the middle class more. And that we're in the throes of a mass extinction event. Well, when I tried to comment on that, they disabled it because, in all sincerity, climate change is happening, yes, but it doesn't cause mass vertebrate die-offs like Arctic terns and the Adelaide penguin chick die-offs and the North Atlantic right whales, which will continue to die. I'm pretty sure of that. Keep in mind, too, there was a couple stories of CBS and CBC that up to half of all American PhDs are faked. So this is really alarming. We've got fake experts out there. And what baffles me is I've had conversations with some of these people online, and they're like, yeah, but this isn't genetic modification. I was like, yeah, it's much worse than that. It's a reproductive parasite. Okay, it's a bacteria that's bad, really bad, and a parasite. So we need to demand that testing on vertebrates be done, and should it be found, those doing these releases need to be held accountable. But the biggest problem right now is we got to stop these releases. And the EPA, I found out they threw out half their science advisory boards or whatever, so I'll show you that headline too. Anyways, thanks for listening. I know it's a long update, but I'll keep you posted.